In today's show, the Indiana Pacers are relentless and unkillable. Are they the model for the Portland Trail Blazers to follow? Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard, Trailblazers reporter Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you most weekdays, 3 days a week this week. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. I'm back from vacation. We did 3 shows this week. We'll be back to our regularly scheduled 5 shows next week. Thanks for rocking with me. You were listening to Friday, June 6th program. This one's coming out a little bit later because it took me a while to get back in town and back in the studio, but I'm here. Let's do it. Let's talk a little bit of basketball. The Indiana Pacers. They won Game 1 of the NBA Finals, one of the truly most thrilling opening games of an NBA Finals of my lifetime. Shout out to a couple others, including Allen Iverson stepping over Tyronn Lue. But in terms of wild finishes in recent memory, about as good as it gets for the first game of the NBA Finals. I'm not going to just recap that game. There are plenty other places on the Locked On Podcast Network to go find that. Go listen to Locked On Pacers. Tony East, I bet, is elated today. Go listen to Locked On Thunder. I bet Rylan Stiles is a little bit dejected. And the folks over at Locked On NBA got you covered. But what I want to talk about in today's program is the Pacers as a blueprint. Are the Pacers a championship-level blueprint that a team like the Portland Trailblazers, your Portland Trailblazers, can follow? We talked about that a little bit in a recent episode, but I want to revisit that with a little more detail, focusing heavily on the Pacers themselves and how and why they are what they are, which is an unkillable and relentless group. Then a little bit of Blazers news to share while I was gone this week. The Blazers have reportedly hired a new assistant coach added to Chauncey Billups' staff. We'll talk about Quinton Crawford added to Billups' bench to close the show. But let's start here with this Pacers game. I'm going to assume you watched the NBA Finals. If you're listening to this, if you didn't, bless you that you are that type of person. That's really amazing. But the Pacers come back from down 15 in the fourth quarter, down 7 with 3 minutes left, and win the game on a Tyrese Halliburton shot with 0.3 seconds remaining. One of the most unlikely comebacks in finals history. The Pacers are now absolutely outrageous, 5-3 when trailing by 15 points in the playoffs this year. If they get down by 15, they are more likely to win than lose. They are truly unkillable. Tyrese Halliburton has hit a shot in the closing seconds of one game, in the final 1.1 seconds of every game in this every round in this playoffs. He did it in the opening round, the second round, did it in the Eastern Conference Finals, and now has done it in the finals. Dude's clutch. The Pacers are incredible. I want to talk about them as a blueprint. That doesn't mean, let me lay out some parameters here. That doesn't mean just like you can do exactly what they did, because I quite frankly, pointing to any team and saying just do that is a fool's errand. It's not how it works with team building. You have, you start from somewhere. You start with the roster you have, the group you have, and then you build out from there. But I think the path and how they went about the path is telling, important for context for the Portland Trailblazers. Let's kind of get into the path. As mentioned in a previous show, I had talked about the 4 teams in the conference finals and how all 4 of those teams had kind of gone about building a high-quality team, because I think, quite frankly, making the conference finals is a meaningful accomplishment that isn't celebrated enough in the NBA. But getting to that round, winning 2 playoff series to get to that round, each of the 4 teams that had made it there went about it in a different way, like drafting Anthony Edwards, number 1 overall, or trading for all-stars, like in the case of the Pacers, signing a big free agent, a star free agent, I would say, not a big name, but Jalen Brunson, like the Knicks, or kind of making a trade that you could never make and then nailing all of the other sort of ancillary moves like the Thunder. But the Pacers, importantly, traded for 2 all-stars. They're 2 best players they acquired via the trade market. But they never bottomed out. And I think this is an important thing for sort of perspective for Blazer fans, and perhaps for your dear host here as well, as I've been sort of in favor of the Blazers, particularly this season. I think they should have lost more games than they did. But you could point to the Pacers and say, like, this isn't a team that like truly was like awful, one of the worst teams in the league. Sure, they were bad for 3 straight seasons. From the 2020 to 2023, they never won more than 35 games. One of those seasons was the shortened post-COVID season, was only 72 games long. So they were about 500 that year, slightly under at 34 wins. They were approaching 500. But the following 2 seasons they're pretty bad. So that first year they drafted 13th. Then during the 21-22 season, they traded for Tyrese Halliburton in February. This is the beginning of the cycle back, right? This is a team that doesn't bottom out. They don't pick in the top 5 in the draft. They aren't an abject tanking team at any point. What they are is a team that had 3 consecutive seasons down and out in the Eastern Conference playoffs, had lottery picks for 3 consecutive seasons, and then built back up through trades, among other things. And it's the among other things that I think I want to make sure that we hit on here to open this particular in this particular program. Open and in the middle throughout it, because I think this Pacers team is really fun. So they draft 13th in the 2021 draft. They draft Chris Duarte, an older collegiate player from Oregon. He's not an NBA player. Whatever. You miss on a lottery pick. You miss on a late lottery pick. It happens. But during that 21-22 season, they're bad again. And during that season, they decide to kind of pivot and go another way. They trade Domantas Sabonis and acquire Tyrese Halliburton in February. That year, they finished 25-57. They're bad. This is a bad basketball team. But Halliburton is clearly pretty good. And the following year, he's going to make it clear that he's pretty good. In the 2022 draft, they are 6th and draft Ben Mathurin. They also, in that draft, get Andrew Nembhard at 31st overall, early in the right at the top of the second round. They draft Nembhard. That's 2022. The following season, they're not particularly good. They're 35-47, but Tyrese Halliburton makes the All-Star team. He averaged 20 and 10. They're clearly on the rise with a young All-Star level point guard. It's just, what else can they do? Because when you say, okay, you've got an All-Star, but you're a below average team, you have, you're a path in the middle. That feels like the Portland Trail Blazers. They got some good players. They won 36 games, not 35, but it's like similar idea. They don't have an all-star level player. It's very, very hard to make an all-star team in the West, and I think that's maybe the why it's not an exact blueprint, but the Pacers didn't from there say, okay, pull the plug. In fact, they went the other way. In the summer of 2023, they drafted Jarris Walker. They had the 7th pick. Technically, they traded back, but again, not a top 5 pick. Seventh pick in the draft. They get Jarris Walker, and they also later in that draft also draft Ben Sheppard, who has been a useful part of the playoff rotation. So that's back-to-back years in 2022 and 2023 where they've drafted Ben Mathurin, Andrew Nembhard, and Ben Sheppard. Jarris Walker, he's been pretty good, but he's not like a huge part of the rotation. He's out for the first couple games of the NBA Finals. I'm not sure he would have played last night regardless, but he's like a fringy rotation guy. But again, 3 straight drafts: Mathurin, Nembhard, Sheppard. You're drafting rotation level players. You're just trading for stars. And then the summer of 2023 is really kind of when they start to take shape. They trade Malcolm Brogdon to Boston for a package that include Aaron Nesmith. At the time, Aaron Nesmith, late first round pick, hadn't really found it in Boston. Okay, worthy flyer, but not exactly particularly exciting. And then during a series of moves where the Knicks kind of chose not to be the team to pay Obi Toppin and we're going another direction, the Knicks trade Obi Toppin to the Pacers. So that summer, they acquire Aaron Nesmith and Obi Toppin. Toppin was huge in Game 1 of the Finals. After a pretty brutal first shift, he got going. He hit 5 threes. He was awesome. So that's the 2023 offseason. They make a draft. They make a draft pick that ends up being not particularly impactful in the immediate term. But they acquire Aaron Nesmith and Obi Toppin. Some minor trades to hit singles, get things right. At the 23-24 trade deadline, when they're 24-17, they're clearly a good team, right? They won 35 games this season ago, but they had an all-star point guard who was taking the leap. The following year at the trade deadline, they're 24-17. They're clearly one of the good teams. Maybe not one of the best teams, but one of the good teams. And they take another swing. They trade draft picks and a package to acquire Pascal Siakam from the Toronto Raptors. And they make the Eastern Conference Finals. Okay, cool. That's an Eastern Conference Finals team. It feels like a fluky run. They got a little bit lucky. And all those things. Even if they're a good team, they're not in the inner circle. They come back this year and they struggled to begin the season, but then they ended up finding their rhythm. Andrew Nembhard got healthy. Aaron Nesmith took a big jump this year to being an impactful player. Played a bunch of the playoffs last year, but wasn't very good. Shot under 30% from 3 during their Eastern Conference Finals run. this year, he's been great in the playoffs, and he took a leap, and their defense has taken a leap along with Nembhard and Nesmith, allowing them to be that good. They won 50 games this season. They were already going to be a really good offensive team because Haliburton is such a good engine, but the defense kind of caught up with what their level they needed to be to get there to complement a very good offense. They trade for Pascal Siakam. They win 50 games, and they're in the freaking finals. So how do you do this? I think there are a couple things to consider when you are the Portland Trail Blazers about how this works, because that's their path from a team that won 25 games in the 2021 season to a team that has made back-to-back conference finals appearances and is up 1-0 in the NBA Finals this season. They don't have any top 5 picks, in the regular rotation. They did not bottom out to get there. They, they're bad, but they didn't truly bottom out to get there. And even their draft picks that they've made in the top 10 with Mathurin and Walker aren't these high level contributors. Plus, they're not a tax team. They're not paying an outrageous sum for this roster just yet. How do you get there? How do you follow this path? Let's talk about a little bit more about the path and how the Blazers can emulate it, if not follow the blueprint. Join me in that second segment. First, though, let's talk about FanDuel. We've got a few games left in the NBA Finals, and FanDuel wants to make sure you get in on the action. Whether it's a game-winning shot from Tyrese Haliburton or a breakout performance from Obi Toppin, there has never been a better time to get in on that action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off or even live. So if you are ahead of the game, the next NBA Finals game is Sunday. You're listening to this, it's coming out like Friday mid-morning, West Coast time. So, you've got a couple days if you want to get in your pregame wagers. That's any type of parlay you want to build, or money lines, or pregame odds. But if you miss tip-off and you just pull up the FanDuel app after the game has started, well, you can combine live player props into same game parlays. You can bet live on scores of each quarter. There's live money lines and all of that. Plus, you can get $200 in bonus bets to add to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits. So, if you're new to FanDuel, it's a perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right. So not only did the Pacers make their moves without bottoming out, and their best 2 players are acquired via trade. They traded for all-stars, Haliburton in 2021, Siakam in 2022. They've also, over the course of this, retained some key role players. Miles Turner has been on the team for a decade, and while they have flirted with trading him essentially every year over the last 5 years, he's still on the team, and he is a useful, if not really high-end starting center. He's a very useful cog in what they want to do. His shooting is valuable. He banked in a 3 in the fourth quarter of game 1. His size allows them to play a little bit bigger, and then they can play a little bit smaller. But while he is big, he allows them to still have the space of the floor and do what they do. They have kept over the last 6 seasons TJ McConnell, who is a really useful backup point guard. He's probably the player on the team that dribbles the most and has the ball in hands on a team that is very egalitarian and shares the ball like crazy. More on that in a moment. But you keep these useful quality role players even beyond maybe what would most teams would consider like the churn of roster, right? Of the sort of the roster churn and the natural turnover of NBA teams. Like, yeah, keep signing Miles Turner to contracts because he's competent. Keep signing TJ McConnell to contracts because he's competent. Like I said, you get this sort of like role player trades, and Nesmith and Toppin, really crucial. Not home runs, but singles, doubles along the way. You get some late round picks right. Nembhard seems like they really nailed it in 2022. Ben Shepherd, pretty useful in 2023, albeit Nembhard might be really freaking good. But, Shepherd is he's just like rotation player who can play a little bit. And they've managed to win with a couple things. Without A1 talent, because as good as Tyrese Haliburton is, he is not one of the absolute best players in the league. I think typically we think of championship teams as you need one of the, say, 5 to 7 best players in the NBA, if not one of the 3 best players in the NBA. And then if you don't have that, say you're like the Celtics last year, and Jason Tatum is, I don't know, the 8th or 9th best player in the league. He's good, even if you think he's the 11th best player in the league. One of the very good players in the league. But everyone else on the roster is one of the 50 best players in the league. Incredible, just a depth of really high-level talent. But the Pacers do this with without that A1 star. Certainly they have 2 all-stars. You can't compete in like this deep into the playoffs without good players. I'm not dismissing them by saying like that I think Tyrese Haliburton is something like the 19th best player in the NBA or something like that. He made an all-NBA team, so you could say he's top 15. I won't quibble with that. Although I probably wouldn't put Jalen Williams as one of the 15 best players in the NBA, but hey, what are you going to do? They have all-star level talent, so I'm not dismissing that. But they do this with identity and depth. They play a bunch of dudes because they play fast and they pressure full court, and their identity flows both ways. On offense, they play quickly. I've really enjoyed the Pacers, not only because they play fast and they play together, right? They move and they cut and they pass and in the half court, but they also like hit ahead and they say like, okay, off a rebound, just kick it ahead and get the ball across half court. See if you can attack, right? So Nembhard and Siakam and Haliburton to some extent have and Nesmith for sure, have some agency to just not like get into the half court and have that whirling, swirling screen pass cut offense that's so fun to watch, but also like just play quickly. They want to run, they want to get deep into the corners. They're a really good shooting team, and they have an offense that is an identity built around the skills of Siakam, who's always been a very, very good transition player dating back to even his early stages in the league, but is kind of this herky-jerky, whirling half-court guy as well, and Haliburton, who is just an engine of a team that wants to play fast. Rick Carlisle is one of the best coaches in the history of the league. I think his long tenure over the last 3 decades in the league proves it, and certainly this back-to-back runs with the Pacers is, for maybe newer fans, icing on the cake. Dude has been winning and creating elite offenses for a long time, one of the most creative coaches in the league. He has built this team. This team plays to an identity, but it flows to the other side of the ball as well. The reason that they pressure full court, and I learned this from reading Caitlin Cooper on Basketball She Wrote, is not just because they think that there's value in pressing, but because it slows teams down. They can't get into their initial actions because they're spending 4 and 7 seconds getting across midcourt. So they're a little bit slower in the half court. It's less time defending in the half court. And you get players that play to the identity. You get players that buy in. The ball moves. When Tyrese Haliburton's taken out of the game in the fourth quarter of game 1, they just let Andrew Nembhard rock on the ball. They play multiple ball handlers. They play guys who can pass. Everyone is unselfish. Even Siakam, who is a guy who they want to get to score in isolation a little bit, or at least get him to his spots and let him attack quickly. The offense creates space. They help each other by creating space to give him those ways to attack because they cut, because they screen, because they play off the ball. They play to such a strong identity on both sides of the court that the offense that sucked in the first half and was awesome in the second half against the Thunder complements the defense, which intentionally plays a high pressure style in order to kind of wear other teams down. One thing that they did against the Cavs, and we're seeing them do against the Thunder, is they say, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Donovan Mitchell, you can score as much as you want. We're going to funnel all of it to you. We don't want to help. We don't want to double. We don't want to get the ball out of your hands. We want to kind of do the opposite in some ways. We want you to be a high usage player, but shut off everywhere else. You're not going to be a high assist team. You're not going to spray out to threes. We're not going to sort of give up your automatic reads. If you beat us, so be it. And they might lose to the Thunder in this exact way, but they're very specific. And I think credit to the coaching staff of the Pacers and credit to the players for buying into the system. So what does this mean for the Portland Trail Blazers briefly? You can't duplicate this, right? You can't, because you don't have Tyrese Haliburton and you don't have Pascal Siakam. But the blueprint itself, I think, is reasonable to consider. I would also say this as a caveat. The Indiana Pacers play in the Eastern Conference. It's just very different. The West is more talented. There are more and better teams. It is harder to make the playoffs. It is harder to win in the playoffs. Would the Pacers have made this run if they had to go through a more challenging Western gauntlet than they did? I don't know. It's impossible to know that, but they don't have to do that. Would they have made this run without some injury luck to Boston and Cleveland? I don't know, but it doesn't matter because they're still in it, right? Part of making the finals or winning at any level is accepting that good fortune has to be on your side. You stay healthier, the other teams don't. You get a chance and you take advantage of those opportunities. Luck doesn't mean that you are no good. Luck means that you are lucky. You need it to win. If the Oklahoma City Thunder come back and beat the Pacers, the Thunder will absolutely benefit from good luck to get them to the place they needed to go in their pursuit of a title. I don't think the Blazers can follow that. At some point, they'll need luck. But I think this idea is worth parsing. You win without A1 talent because the parts fit together really, really well. The sum is greater than its parts. Haliburton, of course, is very, very good, right? He's one of the 20 best players in the league, in my opinion, and you might think even higher of him. Siakam is really good. He's an all-star level player has had some really awesome moments in the playoffs throughout his career, right? He's also very good. They have talent, but talent fits together because they play with such obvious identity and purpose on offense, and the defense, while it is worse than the offense, has talent because of Nesmith's growth this season, and because Andrew Nembhard is really good, and because the other parts, Siakam as a roamer, and because Haliburton is competitive enough to not get completely picked on every time down the floor, albeit he is their weak link that teams often go after. The identity. They play to a strong identity. They play to a strong identity built around the strengths of their best players. And that might be the blueprint here. You don't have to bottom out, but you do have to nail some late round draft picks in Shepard and Nembhard to have a chance. You do have to take chances, like trading multiple picks to acquire Pascal Siakam when you're a decent team, but not a great one, right? That's your chance to get better, but maybe not obviously get into the inner circle. And then you have to build a team that has a strong identity and players that buy into that strong identity. Howard Beck of The Ringer wrote about the Indiana Pacers back on May 30th. This was prior to them making the Eastern Conference, or making the finals, when they were still in the final game of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Knicks, before they had advanced to the finals against the OKC. And Beck wrote the following line: "It took dozens of moves spanning nearly a decade for the Pacers to assemble the group that now sits one win shy of the finals." And I'll paraphrase here. It took dozens of moves spanning nearly a decade for the Pacers to assemble the group that now sits with a 1-0 lead in the NBA Finals. And this is the truth. You can't build this overnight. You can't. Because if the Blazers got the Deni Avdija trade really correct, and they got the acquisition of Toumani Camara really correct, and much like Nesmith, if some of the young players, say Shaedon Sharpe, take a while to find their rhythm and get there, or if some of the players that they currently have on the roster are role players that you just have to commit to and roll with, that's ROLL, like a la Miles Turner, this takes time. Even if you say, okay, well, it really started back in 2021. It took 3 seasons of getting there and a little bit of luck to make it happen. It takes a full cycle. So say the Blazers sort of like started that path now with, this past season, right? And they've got 2 more years to do it. It doesn't mean that it automatically works, right? It doesn't mean that you follow the blueprint, but the idea is that you nail late round picks. You continue to make opportunistic trades for role players that fit the identity. You build a team that fits around your best players' best skills, and then you have your offensive system complement your defensive system, so you're playing with a strong identity at all times. And then you benefit from a little bit of luck. That's the path. That's the blueprint. Can you follow it perfectly? No, but the Pacers are proof that there is a world in which you can not have that A1 top tier talent and not draft in the top 5 for 4 consecutive seasons or whatever, and build a winner. How good of a winner? Well, the Pacers are unkillable. All they do is win games that you think they should lose. That's what they've been doing all postseason. They're incredibly fun, incredibly entertaining. If they win the championship, it's proof that anything is possible and you don't even have to spend the luxury tax to win. But if they lose, it is proof that you can build a very good team, regardless of the outcome of the finals, in a variety of ways. But those variety of ways take real time, and they take several, if not, to quote Beck, dozens of moves spanning over a decade to get each little move right. There are ways to jump steps, but probably the way to win with and having A1 talent allows you to jump steps and also allows you to make mistakes. But if you don't have A1 talent and you don't have that top tier talent, it takes a series of small incremental moves to build up. And the Pacers are proof that those small incremental moves can build up and you can get there. Can you get to the promised land? We'll find out. But certainly at this point, betting against the Pacers seems indeed foolish because they keep winning every time I think they're dead. Truly unkillable, truly relentless, and an absolute joy to watch. I really enjoyed Game 1 of the finals. I hope that the remaining games are even close to as entertaining. The Pacers are not maybe the exact blueprint, but they are proof that there is a path to follow. Blazers hired an assistant coach. Let's talk about that news in the 3rd segment. Join me there, won't ya? still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You're still listening to Locked On Blazers, and the Portland Trail Blazers have added to Chauncey Billups' coaching staff, as first reported by Chris Haynes. The Blazers have hired Quinton Crawford, formerly the head coach of the Stockton Kings and the G League, to be added to Chauncey's bench. I don't know, to be their next assistant coach. I don't think that's how that works. To be an assistant on Chauncey Billups' bench. Of course, the Blazers let go of two front of the bench assistants in Chris Fleming and Roy Rogers, as well as a behind the bench assistant as well. So they're going to have to hire at least one and likely two other coaches. So who is Quinton Crawford? Well, like I said, he spent most recently as the head coach of the Stockton Kings, who won the G League championship. So he has worked in the sort of world of player development, which is the G League, and had some success in it, although I'm not 100% sure that tying G League success to obvious coaching acumen is necessarily correct, but in general, Crawford followed a path that I think is valuable. He's been someone who's been in the league for a long time. He spent 4 seasons as a video coordinator in Sacramento, in Charlotte, and a couple seasons with Frank Vogel in Orlando. Prior to the 2018-2019 season, he had spent 2 seasons as a video coordinator on Vogel's staff with the Magic. Crawford is a Vogel guy. If you're looking for his coaching tree, he is very clearly a branch off the Frank Vogel coaching tree. So Crawford spent the 2018-19 season as a player development coach with the Hornets. Then Vogel gets hired by the Lakers, and Crawford joins that Lakers staff that eventually wins the bubble championship in Disney World in 2020. That was Frank Vogel's first year, and also Crawford's first year with the Lakers. Crawford would spend 2 more seasons with the Lakers before Vogel was fired, and he was fired along with him because a changeover in coaches. It's how it typically works. Also on that staff was on that Lakers staff of the bubble team was Jason Kidd. When Jason Kidd was hired by the Dallas Mavericks, eventually brought on Crawford with the Mavs when Vogel got fired and Crawford needed a job, and Crawford spent the 2022-2023 season on Kidd's staff with the Mavericks, and then Frank Vogel got a new job. In 2023, hired by the Phoenix Suns, and Crawford again joined Vogel's staff. So he's a Vogel guy, video assistant with the Magic. Then on that Lakers staff, then joined one of the Lakers assistants, Jason Kidd, with the Mavs when Vogel was out of the league. And then when Vogel's back in the league in 2023, spends a year with the Suns. Of course, the Suns only hire coaches for 1 year at a time. So when Vogel was fired, Crawford needed a job, and then he joined the Stockton Kings, got some head coaching experience after a relatively long stint as an assistant coach in the league. I think it's impossible to know in general, like the overall impact of assistant coaches, but I do like this as a path. This is a guy who spent 4 seasons as a video coordinator, spent a year in player development, and has spent multiple stints from 2019 as a true assistant outside, like on front of the bench assistant, or at least non-player development type of assistant coaching title from 2019 through 2024. Was that 6 seasons as an assistant coach in the league, has assistant coaching experience, and then has coached in the G League, has sort of gone that player development route. So as someone who is, dealt with building young players up and building skills and helping them grow as basketball players. And has also just dealt with the world that is NBA coaching, which is managing egos, dudes who don't want to work, dudes who want to work a whole bunch, the rhythm of an NBA season and all of those things. Will I pretend to know whether Quinton Crawford is a great hire? No, but I will say this. If you're looking for the type of resume that fits an appealing assistant coach, this is a 34-year-old who has already had a significant amount of NBA experience. A young person with experience. What more could you want from assistant coach, right? Perhaps maybe you're looking for a veteran assistant. I wouldn't be surprised if Blazers do add that to the staff, but there's also some sort of minor news. I'm surprised this is news, but Michael Scotto of Hoops Hype reported the Blazers are re-signing assistant coaches Nate Bjorkgren, Ronnie Burrell, and Jacob Mulim. Jacob is an analytics coach, sits behind the bench. You've seen him. Ronnie Burrell, also behind the bench coach, and Nate Bjorkgren was, the lead assistant on the staff last year. I was under the impression that all those gentlemen were already on the staff, but I guess I don't understand completely how assistant coaching contracts work. But Scotto has reported that they're all re-signing those coaches, Bjorkgren, Burrell, and Mulim. So there are still a couple spots, and one spot on the front of the bench, and one spot behind the bench. If you're looking for a veteran assistant, that's probably Bjorkgren, but they certainly could add another one with that institutional knowledge that comes with being in the league a long time, and they'll probably add another behind the bench type of player to the staff. We shall see what exactly that looks like. That is going to do it for today's program. Next week, 5 of them. We'll see what happens. No, just kidding. I'm trying to get some. I'm trying to get some interviews. We'll talk draft stuff. I bet the Blazers will do some draft workouts next week as well, or at least one draft workout. But judging by my guess at the calendar, at least one draft workout next week. We'll talk all about that. But I'm back from vacation, so look for them in your feed. Normal place, normal time. 5 of them next week, wherever you get podcasts. Also on YouTube. Tell your friends about the program. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.